I never liked my birthday because bad things always happened, but this year was different because I got gifts that changed everything. It began when a package arrived at my house with no name or return address, just a small black box wrapped in crimson ribbon. My parents thought it was from a distant relative, and they put it with the rest of me. That night, I opened it to find a porcelain doll dressed in Victorian attire, her glass eyes staring blankly ahead, and a note written in shaky handwriting, "She is yours, now take care of her or she will take care of you." I laughed it off, thinking it was a joke, but as I turned the doll in my hands, I felt a chill. Her eyes had moved, so it had to be my imagination. At precisely 3 in the morning, I put her on my shelf and went to bed. A faint whisper, barely perceptible like wind sneaking through wall cracks, awakened me up. I sat up, heart pounding. The room was silent, but then I saw her. The doll was no longer on the shelf. She was sitting on my desk facing me. I tried to convince myself that I had moved her and forgotten, but the next night she appeared on my nightstand. The night after that she was at the foot of my bed. Then the nightmares began. I dreamed of shadowy figures standing over me, their fingers long and twisted. I dreamed of whispers growing louder each night. By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to throw the doll away. That was a mistake. That night as I tried to sleep, I heard my closet door creak open. I didn't want to look. I knew what I would see, but I had to. The doll stood there. Her porcelain face cracked, her smile wider than before, and then she moved. I never screamed so loud in my life. My parents rushed in, but by the time they turned on the lights, she was gone. They didn't believe me. No one did, but I know she's still out there watching, waiting, because every year on my birthday I receive another black box. I stopped celebrating my birthday after that year. No cake, no candles, no presents, but the boxes still came, always black, always wrapped in that crimson ribbon. For a while I refused to open them. I'd bury them in the backyard, toss them into the river, even burn them, but no matter what I did, another would appear in my room the next morning. Then on my 18th birthday I made a mistake. I opened one. Inside was something different. This time no doll, just an old rusted key and a note, "Time to come home." Home, what did that mean? My home was here with my parents, but deep down I knew that wasn't what the note meant. That night I had the worst nightmare yet. I was standing in front of a decrepit house, its windows shattered, the W rotting away. The door was slightly open. I knew I had to go inside, but as soon as I did, the door slammed behind me. The air was heavy with the smell of decay, and the walls were covered in peeling wallpaper with dozens of portraits of me hanging on them, all of which had my eyes missing. Then I heard a child's laugh reverberating through the halls, and my blood froze. I turned, and there she was, the doll, but she was no longer porcelain. Instead, she was life-sized, with a cracked face and glass eyes that followed every move I made. "You took too long," she whispered. I woke up, gasping, drenched in sweat, but the nightmare continued when I opened my eyes because the key from the box was in my hand. And on the wall of my bedroom, where nothing had been before, there was now a door that hadn't been there before, and it was slightly open. A part of me wanted to run away from the house and never come back, but something stronger and deeper kept me rooted in place. There was a whisper at the back of my mind that compelled me to keep going, and the key grew hot in my palm, searing my skin and pushing me forward. I stepped toward the door, my fingers shaking as I slid the key into the lock, and the moment it clicked, the door creaked open on its own, revealing nothing but darkness. I stared at the door, my breath shallow, my heart a drum in my chest, and my room had 4 walls that had remained constant for years. The whispers started out as faint as the wind rustling dead leaves, but as they got louder, I heard overlapping voices murmuring in a language I didn't understand. The air became heavy with the smell of damp wood and something metallic, like blood. I should have turned around and thrown away the key, but instead I heard my own voice. The door slammed shut behind me as soon as I entered, sending me into complete blackness. I could feel a cold hand grabbing my spine and my feet moving forward against my will as the darkness whispered inside. The wall behind me was solid as if the door had never been there, so I turned and searched for the handle, but it was gone. I lurched forward, my breath coming in jerky gasps as panic swept through me. The whispers swirled around me, now desperate, and then I saw their shapes shifting in the darkness, figures just beyond my vision, their movements unnatural, jerking like a marionette with broken strings, and their elongated fingers scratching against the wood, leaving deep grooves. A flickering light appeared ahead, revealing a long, narrow hallway with portraits of me on the walls, each one with a distorted version of my face, some with hollow eyes and others with a twisted, grotesque grin that stretched from ear to ear. I couldn't help but step closer to one, and as my fingers touched the canvas, the painted version of me suddenly blinked, stumbled back, my pulse hammering the eyes in the painting, followed me, and then slowly its lips parted, a voice raspy and broken, escaping from it, "It's too late." The whispers turned into cries. Then I felt cold, brittle fingers wrapped around my wrist. I turned my head slowly, and there she was, the doll, but she was no longer a doll. She stood taller now, her once porcelain face cracked and split open to reveal something rotting underneath her glass eyes, which gleamed with hunger. "You should have taken care of me," she whispered. "Now I'll take care of you." The figures surged forward from the darkness, their mouths gaping wide, full of teeth too long and sharp, and my legs refused to move. Nails sinking into my skin, I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. My vision blurred, the walls around me twisted and stretched, the paintings warping into grotesque laughing faces. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my room. The morning sun poured through the window as if nothing had happened. The door was gone, the key was nowhere to be found. For a moment I thought it had all been a dream, until I saw the black box sitting on my desk. But this time it wasn't wrapped in a crimson ribbon. This time it was open, and inside was a painting of me, but in this one my eyes were missing and my lips were twisted into a smile that wasn't mine. I never knew my grandmother well. She was always a distant figure in my childhood, an old woman with hollow eyes and a whispering voice, always draped in black, smelling of mothballs and something more pungent, something that reminded me of damp earth and decay. When she died, my parents barely mourned. They never spoke of her much, only that she had been a difficult woman with strange beliefs. When a package arrived on my 21st birthday, it was a plain wooden box, worn and unvarnished, tied with a faded black ribbon. My parents exchanged scrawled in black ink on the top. At first, I thought it was from a relative, maybe my estranged uncle or an old friend playing a prank, but when I picked it up, something about it felt wrong. The box was heavier than it should have been for its size, and when I pressed my touching the wood with the fingers, my first error was taking it inside, even though I could swear I felt a slight, nearly undetectable shudder beneath my fingertips. I put the box on my desk and stared at it for what seemed like hours. I should have thrown it away or ignored it, but as soon as I untied the ribbon, I opened it. As if the box had been holding its breath, a rush of air spilled from inside, and the resulting stench was intolerably damp. A mask fashioned of what appeared to be bone, with a surface that had yellowed and split with age, was snuggled in rotting velvet and containing earth, rusted metal, and something biological. The design was detailed, almost beautiful, with exquisite carvings spiraling out from the hollowed-out sockets. I'm not sure why, but as soon as I touched it, I sensed a change in the atmosphere, as if the room itself was holding its breath. I heard a faint, moist whisper, slipped it on, dropped the mask, and staggered back. I woke up that night to find the mask in my bed. I know I left it in the box. I remember closing the lid and tying the ribbon back as tightly as I could, but now it was lying next to me on the pillow, its hollow eyes staring at me. My heart was pounding in my ears, and my hands were shaking. Perhaps I was just tired, or perhaps I was having hallucinations, but as I turned away, I noticed something in the corner of my eye, a shadow standing at the room's edge, watching. Now that it was coming from the walls, ceiling, and air itself, the whispering was louder. The second mistake I made that night was tossing the mask back into the box. carrying it outside, and throwing it in the trash. I heard slow, deliberate footsteps in my house, a dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across the floor, so I locked my bedroom door and stayed put until morning. The box was back on my table, the trash can outside was unopened, but the box was waiting for me. The ribbon was gone, the lid was slightly open, and the mask was inside a different one. The carvings were deeper and more detailed now, with veins running over the surface and two black, gleaming eyes staring up at me from the eye sockets. I thought I was safe until I turned on the bathroom light and saw the box sitting on the counter. The mirror above the sink was fogged as if someone had been breathing on it, and the condensation had jagged, uneven letters written on it. I tried to destroy it. I ran, packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and drove for hours trying to avoid the feeling of invisible eyes on the back of my neck. I checked into a motel, locked the door, and pushed the dresser in front of it. The box was waiting for me unharmed when I got back to my motel room, but when I close my eyes now, I see things. I set the box on fire in an empty parking lot, saw the flames consume the wood, turning it to ash, watched the mask blacken and break, and watched it scream. The figures and shadows moving at the borders of my vision are staring at me from the shadowy corners of the room, and the mask is calling my name now instead of just whispering. I haven't eaten or slept, and the mask wants me. The whispers have turned into shouts, and my reflection is no longer mine. The object in the mirror is smiling even though my lips are still closed, and the mask is now waiting for me on my bed. I know what it wants and what will happen next, but I refuse to let it win. If you hear the whispers and find this, I have one final choice. Don't pay attention to asterisks, and if a package ever shows up at your house, don't open the red ribbon that is wrapped around it because you won't be alone ever again. I now know that I should never have accepted the gift, but I was too intrigued to ignore it when it came wrapped in old brown paper and tied with a frayed red ribbon. My name was written in black ink on top, and there was no return address or sender. At first, I assumed it was a joke from a relative, possibly my estranged uncle or an old friend, but when I picked it up, something felt off. The box was heavier than it should have been for its size, and I swear I felt it move when I pressed my fingers against the wood. Despite this, I took it inside, which was my first mistake. I put the box on my dining table and stared at it for what seemed like hours. I should have thrown it away or ignored it, but as soon as I untied the ribbon, I opened it. As if the box had been holding its breath, a rush of air spilled from inside, and the resulting stench was intolerably damp. An exquisite, almost beautiful design with delicate carvings snaking out from the hollowed-out eye sockets was found within a mask constructed of what appeared to be bone, rusted metal, something biological, and rotting inside nestled in rotting velvet. I don't know why, but as soon as I touched it, I felt like the room was holding its breath. Then, I heard a faint wet whisper, and I put it on. I dropped the mask and staggered back, my heart pounding loudly in my ears, and my hands shaking. I didn't sleep that night, but as I turned away, I noticed something in the corner of my eye, a shadow standing at the edge of the room, watching. I know I left the mask in the box. I remember closing the lid and tying the ribbon back as firmly as I could, but now it was lying next to me on the pillow, its hollow eyes staring at me. Now that it was coming from the walls, ceiling, and air itself, the whispering was louder. There was a chorus of voices speaking in a language I didn't understand, so I threw the mask back into the box, carried it outside, and threw it in the trash. That was my second mistake that night. I heard slow, deliberate footsteps in my house, a dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I locked my bedroom door and didn't move until the next morning. The box was back on my table, the trash outside was undisturbed, but the box was here waiting for me. The ribbon was gone, the lid was slightly jar-shaped, and the mask inside was different, with deeper, more intricate carvings that looked like veins spreading across its surface, and two black, glistening eyes staring up at me. I thought I was safe until I turned on the bathroom light. The box was sitting on the counter, the mirror above the sink was fogged as if someone had been breathing on it, and the condensation had jagged, uneven letters written on it. I tried to destroy it. I ran, packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and drove for hours trying to avoid the feeling of invisible eyes on the back of my neck. I checked into a motel, locked the door, and pushed the dresser in front of it. The box was waiting for me unharmed when I got back to my motel room, but when I close my eyes now, I see things. I set the box on fire in an empty parking lot, saw the flames consume the wood, turning it to ash, watched the mask blacken and break, and watched it scream. Faces are peering at me from the shadowy corners of the room, shadows are shifting at the borders of my vision, and the mask is shouting my name now instead of just whispering. The mask wants me, and I can't run or get away. I haven't eaten or slept, and the whispers have turned into screams. My reflection is no longer mine, it's smiling even though my lips are still closed, and the mask is waiting for me on my bed. I know what it wants and what will happen next, but I won't let it win. If you find this or hear the whispers, you have one more choice. Don't pay attention to asterisks, and if a package ever shows up at your house, don't open the red ribbon that is wrapped around it because you won't be alone ever again. Every time I shut my eyes, I see things twisting and writing shapes in the dark, roots expanding beneath my skin, leaves unfolding inside my chest, and my veins, which no longer seem like veins, pulse, twitch, and move on their own. I don't feel like myself, I feel like something else. I haven't been able to sleep. In the dimly lit motel bathroom, I attempted to cut it out. I got a knife and pressed it against my forearm, just below the elbow, hoping that if I could create a tiny cut and see what was underneath, I might stop it. The blade easily cut through the skin, but instead of blood, it was roots, thin black tendrils that were pushed out from the wound and wriggled like worms as I watched them slither out of my arm toward the mirror, toward the light, toward me. I dropped the knife, and even though my heart was pounding and my breathing was labored, the roots continued to move back inside, crawling under my skin, and the cut sealed itself as if I had never been hurt before. I try not to listen to the whispers, but they're everywhere now, not just in my head, but in the walls, the air, and the worst part is that I can understand them now, their instructions. The motel room has changed overnight. The walls are soft like damp earth, my pillow smells like mulch, and the floorboards creak beneath my feet, but they sound wet now instead of W. I don't know how I got here, but I woke up somewhere else. It looks like my motel room, except that the walls are thick and pulsing vines that weave together to form the shape of a room. The ceiling is alive, shifting as if it were breathing, the bed is covered in black moss, and the door is gone. I try to scream, but my throat is dry and full of leaves, and my fingernails are dark and cracked at the edges. When I put my palm against my chest, I feel movement inside, as if something were trying to come out. I'm not alone, as I thought I was, because I see other people here, half plant, half human, in the corners. They used to be like me, but now they are tangled with roots, their eyes are dark as dirt, and they swing like trees in the wind, their lips opening in wordless cries. They lost their attempt to combat it, so they are now waiting for me to join them. My reflection has vanished. Nothing is there when I look in the mirror, just a blank spot where I should be, but I can sense that someone is observing me. Something breathing is approaching, and I can hear the roots tightening around my bones and wending their way through my muscles. My skin is no longer skin, instead, It is bark that is splitting at the seams and stretching as the thing inside of me presses closer to the surface. I know what it wants, to be free and spread, but I can no longer fight it. I thought I could, that I was stronger, but now I hear them. As I whisper, grow, and twist inside my skull, I see what will happen next. The people who came before me didn't vanish. Instead, they became a part of it, and soon I will too. If you're reading this, it means that I'm gone, but I'm not dead. I've changed, and you will soon be too, because the seed never dies, it just waits, it only grows, and it's already inside you. I feel at ease now, not because my fear has subsided, but rather because I realize that this was a transformation and never a curse. The people in the shadows before me, the ones who swayed like trees in the wind, weren't stuck. They were evolving, and now I am, too. I'm no longer afraid of the whispers. Instead, they embrace me. The walls are gone. There is no longer a motel, no furniture, no ceiling, just the forest and the endless green. The air is heavy with the smell of earth and the decay of old wood and new life. The trees pulse as I do. Their veins are mine. Their voices are mine. The vines embrace me. I am no longer just flesh. I am roots. I am leaves. I am a part of it. Because the seed was never meant for just one person. Rather, it was meant to spread and find new soil, and it always does. Somewhere far away, another package has just arrived, wrapped in twine and sealed with a name waiting to be opened and grow waiting for you.